Little Pavillion, a farming community near Pilot Butte Reservoir in the Wind River Valley. You could live in Wyoming a lifetime and never have heard of Pavillion until recently, when ranchers nearby began complaining something was wrong with the water. In a few cases, you could light it on fire. Well, the cause of that problem outside of town is still unresolved, and life in town goes on. Producer Stephanie Smith went out to find out a little more about Pavillion and met, among others, Miss Ginny.
Troubled waters last year had this small town in the headlines time and again. And while Pavillion proper remains unafflicted by the contaminated wells and the associated fracking controversy, it shares the concerns haunting some of the ranchers to the east. Last year, Governor Freudenthal ordered a feasibility study to address the water issue.
Part of that feasibility study was the possibility that Pavillion would be a provider for that water for our neighbors east of town. And after speaking with residents and with the town council, they're our friends, they're our neighbors. Some even have family that live here and go to our schools. And Pavillion would be pleased to be able to provide that to our people out there east.
You see, Pavillion is the heart of this isolated farm community, and many around the state have felt its unique magnetic pull. Like Warren Stevens' logging family, who left the mountain in the 50s and came to Pavillion. They started the sawmill so Orrin and his sister could go to school. 60 years later, and still the school sees over 400 children arrive each day.
Most of the students at the school come from the outlying areas of Fremont County. District 6 encompasses quite a wide area. Most of our students do come from the farming community, with probably 50 students coming from the town itself.
If you have anything to do with livestock in the county, you know that hard work and agriculture is what this area is all about. And for generations of locals, work and play come together at the Pavillion Arena.
There's 4 or 5 different riding clubs and rodeo clubs and youth rodeo in the area. And that arena is busy almost every night, well, from Thursday night through the weekend. There are barrel races, youth rodeos, mutton busting. I can't wait till my little grandson is old enough to mutton bust. I have an idea for a Velcro vest I'm going to make for him. And it's just a neat thing to have right in this little town, 125, 126 people. We have our own rodeo arena. I got to have 65 salads. You think 2 cases?
In meeting Ginny Warren today, you would never guess that just a few years ago she had lost all to Hurricane Katrina. She was fortunate, though. Her son had bought a ranch outside of Pavillion just 2 weeks after the hurricane hit. As she got her bearings, one of her first introductions was the Pavillion think tank.
There was about 10 or 12 ranchers and cowboys and hired men and farmers that would come up and get together every morning. They called it the Pavillion think tank. And I sort of showed up one day with John, my neighbor, and they all kind of accepted me. And so I started baking birthday cakes. Every time I'd find out one of them had a birthday, I'd bake a big birthday cake and make a big deal out of it. Word got out, apparently among the wives, that there was this goofy blonde from Louisiana that was baking cookies and having Mardi Gras parties at the coffee shop. And eventually I got to meet all the girls, and we've become great friends. They're my best customers here at the restaurant. But it took a while. They were kind of wondering what was going on at the Basketeria.
Being the creative force that Ginny is, it didn't take long for her new life to come into focus. The steakhouse came up for sale, and looking at it now, it's clear it was destiny. Gifted in the art of hospitality, all she needed was a crew.
I felt like the first year I needed to have a few more servers than I would really need, just to be sure that I had the level of service that I'm used to coming from New Orleans, which is a big food city. So I started interviewing, and I was amazed at the work ethic of the young people that I found here. They're hard workers, they're eager to learn, they're friendly, they show up when they say they're going to show up. I mean, it's probably the best labor market I've encountered in the hospitality industry. New Orleans, if you wanted 10 waiters in a restaurant one night, you'd schedule 14, and hopefully you might get 8. But here, my crew shows up.
And so do the customers.
One of my best customers, the Vogels and the Mantle family, that have a big horse leasing operation, and a couple times a year they move their herds of 300-400 horses from point A to point B, and they move them on highways. It's quite spectacular to see, and it takes anywhere from 8 to 20 cowhands, wranglers, to move this many horses, and they'll bring them in here for a big dinner after they've been out on the road, and I've actually gotten to ride with them a couple times.
So if all that hasn't lured you on a trip out to Pavillion, maybe this will.
I did a Cinco de Mayo where I researched and found some really unusual, authentic Mexican recipes, and we had a big turnout for that. I do a Mardi Gras buffet. I only do it once a year because I cook for 3 or 4 days getting ready for it, and I try to have as much Cajun food as I can put out. And I do Cajun food on Wednesday nights. I'll cook 1 or 2 or 3 dishes depending on how much time I have. And picked immediately. Dalbo's a few weeks ago brought in a big party of 12, 14 people, and they treat all their hands and everybody that helps them to a big dinner, and they sit back and relax, and it's the end of the season, and kind of a toast and thank you for all your help to their hands and stuff. It's interesting. It's so many facets to this little community that you would never think existed.